Welcome back to the Jakarta Globe News Channel. I'm Florence Armein on The Perspective with Professor Dewi Fortuna Anwar on Indonesia's foreign policy. South China Sea, Professor. We have seen how Jokowi has taken a stance. He sailed tuna. And this has seen by global leaders that Jokowi is taking a stance against China on its asserts towards boundaries and islands in the region.
And I think I'm glad you raised that issues, because there's been a lot of discussions and impressions that because Indonesia's relations with China have really gone up to another stage,
escalated
because Indonesia's relations with China, in fact, very, very close.
Yeah.
China is one of the largest investors now in Indonesia, and it has won this contract.
Yeah, and it's vice versa for China as well.
to build this fast train from Jakarta to Bandung. So, and Indonesia is encouraging a lot of Chinese investment in Indonesia, particularly in infrastructure, but also in other areas. People have begun to wonder whether, Indonesia is now in China's camp, therefore it's becoming very dependent on China, and so on and so forth. But I've always underlined that Indonesia is a big country. Indonesia is a big country, and it has always emphasized its free and active foreign policy, and it has developed equally close relations with all the relevant major powers. We've pointed out a number of line ministers being charged with assisting in economic diplomacy. So one should not confuse between the wider economic interest and the inviolable and non-negotiable concerns about territorial integrity and sovereignty and security. And I think President Jokowi has amply demonstrated the fact that Indonesia's sovereignty is of primary concern, and he has put action to prove that he means business when he talks about ensuring maritime security. And so, when there was this news about Indonesian waters being violated, Indonesia's exclusive economic zones being violated, he has taken a very, I think, an important symbolic step. By going there on a warship, holding a meeting there, and now instructing that we develop Natuna to be, not just an important fishing port, but also to be the base for our navy there to ensure the security of our maritime boundaries.
Right, and also his policy on sinking illegal fishing vessels, and that has had. You reckon that has not hampered, or that has not somehow bite the relationship between China and Indonesia?
Well, don't only look at China, because those illegal fishermen, IUU fishing, China is just one of China's fishermen. It's just one of many. Many of the other fishermen are from our neighboring ASEAN countries, who are our partners, who are in the process of building ASEAN Economic Community. But the illegal fishing continues to go. So I think Indonesia doesn't see this simply. This is not regarded as territorial integrity violation, but it's mostly law enforcement. But there were concern about, with China, it took a different edge because of the Coast Guard involvement, ramming of Indonesian ship and so on. So there were some security dimensions there as well. But on all other issues, this is a regular law enforcement at sea, which is taken at a higher level. And I think this is in line with President Joko Widodo's maritime policy, namely developing maritime culture, managing and protecting marine resources, ensuring maritime defense and security, promoting maritime connectivity, and also defense and diplomacy and defense and security.
Now, finally, Professor, we have a very limited time. I'd just like to touch on the current global issue that I think Indonesia should have a vested interest in, is the U.S. presidential election. Now, we have spoken earlier here. Commentator Stanley Wee says that whoever is elected as president is coming November, should consider start really working closely with Indonesia and invite and work on inviting Jokowi to speak to the Congress.
Yeah.
Your views on this?
Well, I do believe, because I'm an Indonesian, and I do believe that Indonesia is not simply a small, insignificant country. Indonesia is a fourth largest country in the world with 50 million population. Yeah. Indonesia, in terms of the conflicts that the world faces now with Islamic terrorism, misusing Islamic name, and all the problems, Indonesia, as the largest Muslim nation, has some role to play there. Indonesia is, a member of the G20. Indonesia is the largest member of ASEAN, and ASEAN plays a primary driving role within the wider regional architecture. So Indonesia in itself, and also within the wider Southeast Asian and East Asian region, is a country that can play a very strategic role. Indonesia also is an active player in international peacekeeping. We are aiming to be a top 10 troop contributing countries. Yeah, so it's about time that Indonesia is given its due. A US president has always visited Indonesia, so that is nothing new. But of course, Indonesian president has never been invited to speak at the U.S. Congress. They have invited Aung San Suu Kyi, but not yet the Indonesian president. So that should be something that would also emphasize the close bilateral relations between Indonesia and the U.S. And if you remember, only last year, President Joko Widodo visited Washington, and we have the bilateral relations between Indonesia and the US have been upscaled to become more a strategic relationship.
Even if US should pivot to Indonesia, Jokowi has paved the way there for a closer ties between.
Obama pivoted to Indonesia already, so this is just a continuation of that. And particularly if President Trump were to become, if Donald Trump were to become president, he has a lot of baggage that he has to shed. And unless he does something spectacular, he's not going to be terribly popular here, because his pronouncements about banning Muslims and racism and so on. So I think he will need to carry a lot of favor. Otherwise, he could actually derail some of their projects that are currently in place.
Professor, thank you so much for your time on this, and I'm sure not just me, but our viewers out there are more in a better understanding of what takes or what makes the shift and changes in foreign policy under Jokowi's administration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Florence.
Thank you for watching The Perspective. I'm Florence Armein. I'll see you next time.